Good morning, members of Parliament, support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those viewing via social media, and members of the media. Good morning to everyone. Welcome to this Central Committee meeting number 22 for today, Friday, August the 30th, 2024. I would like to give a special welcome to the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luke Mercelina, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 9 members. I would like to take this time now, and we stand for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. I had to stand, got to stand this day. Yeah? I have received notice of absence from the following members: MP Sarah Westcott Williams. I've also received a notification of lateness from MP Marlin. I'll now go over to notifications and look towards the honorable members of Parliament and ask, do anyone have any notifications? I see no one as such. Thank you very much. We have as an agenda point, update on all matters relating to GEBE. You can find this on IS 477 for the parliamentary year of 2023-2024, dated March the 7th, 2024. And we go over to the agenda point. On March 7th, 2024, Parliament received a letter from MP Utley, MP Arundel, MP La Cruz, with a request for a meeting of a Central Committee of Parliament with the aforementioned agenda points. The presence of the Prime Minister was also requested. In the meantime, Parliament has had several meetings regarding GEBE. However, this meeting that was requested was called today to honor the request and to ensure that Parliament receive an update regarding GEBE situations. Hence, today we have this meeting. At this time, I look at the floor, and what I would like to do is give the floor to the requesters of this meeting to motivate their request in any addition to what I have already said. I will now give them the floor to speak a few on this meeting. I see Omad, Honorable Member Utley, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good day to the Honorable Prime Minister, your support staff, the Special Representative for GEBE, and my honorable colleagues and the viewing and listening public. This meeting was actually requested many months ago. It was requested by myself and other colleagues due to the fact that upon entering Parliament, GEBE had a continuing meeting where we were not able to speak or ask any questions. From then, there were a lot of series of developments that took place in GEBE. However, considering that the problem is not fixed, I think the meeting is still indeed relevant at this moment. So it is important for us to hear what solutions has been brought to the table. Where are we now? As I see, we are still experiencing load shedding. So it'd be interesting to see the current update from the last time we met.
I thank you very much to the Honorable Member Omar Utley. No one else? Okay, therefore, I will now go over. I would like to give the floor to the Honorable Prime Minister and the Prime Minister as well, Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luke Mercelina, to give opening remarks. And also, if there's any presentation, now is your time. I now give you the floor. Honorable Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. The first place, President of Parliament, Secretary General, members of Parliament, the public in the Tribune, and those following in whatever form on social media. Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Today I'm invited to give an update on the status of GEBE. I will do it with the guidance of a PowerPoint presentation. As you know, we have been encountering challenges with our utility service to our country. And we started with the ordering of the 10 megawatt containerized containers generators that we commissioned on August the 13th, 2024 to provide a immediate relief to the shortfall of power supply to St. Martin. The power plant consists of 7 brand new containers that are capable together to produce 11.2 megawatt of electricity. The design of this plant is based on the N1 standard for enhanced reliability, meaning that the power plant can guarantee standard 10 megawatt of power even if one generator is down. There is seamless synchronization with the NV-GEBE grid to ensure stable supply to the grid, and there were no technical challenges in the face of commissioning these containers. We had the preparation phase. I just go fast through it, just to prepare the site to put this mini planet next to the one we know already of GEBE. We had to pour the beams to put the containerized generators on. We had to trench and, of course, make sure that we had the necessary cabling to the containerized generators. We had to work on the connections to the grid from the generators. We had to test them, and the end result is here. We're seeing a helicopter view of how the plant looks from the helicopter side. What you see, the long ones with the black squares on the roof, are the 7 generators. There are 7 of them, as I said. In between the 2 sets of 4 and 3 containerized generators, we have the structure, 2 of them. These are the transformers. And on the left side, you see a black one and a white one. That is the fuel tanks to supply the generators with diesel. We have done with this intervention, we had some immediate contribution to mitigate the situation that we were in. With these 10 generators, we were able to reduce the hours of load shedding scattered over the island. We had a possibility, although limited, to have options to have some maintenance for the older diesel generators that we had on the plant of GEBE. We decreased the load by using and adding these 10 megawatts to the grid for the existing generators, and we provided additional stability to the grid. If you see this graph, this is an interesting one. We have if you follow the graph, the red one, you see that horizontally we have the days in August, and horizontally we have the axis being the amount of hours of load shedding. And you see, for example, we start by the 1st of August going to till a registration of the 27th, and we see a gradual decrease in load shedding over the island, especially when we started on the 13th by commissioning the new additional 10 megawatts. You see still that we had a little hype from the 13th to the 18th, going down back to the 19th of August. And that can be explained by the sea surge that took place due to the tropical storm that we had recently. That makes that you get an enormous flow of salt water for the cooling system that is contaminated with debris, with plants that goes through the cooling system, and that gives some challenges with the cooling of the generators. And that's why we had, while we started with the 10 megawatt addition to the grid, still we noticed that we had a slight hype in the load shedding. But after the 19th, as of the 18-19, you see a significant lowering of the load shedding. That, for example, on the 27th of August, you see approximately that we have now approximately 15 to 16 hours a day of load shedding. And how do you interpret these 16 hours? It's about, for example, if you have in St. Peter's 2 hours, in Coal Bay 2 hours, and Simpson Bay 2 hours, together you add them together to have an impression about the amount of hours that you had load shedding in the totality of the community. But the graph shows a significant decrease in load shedding for the community. The short-term solution, that's the second phase that we are in now. We're going to add an extra 20 megawatt containerized generators to the power plant. And these 20 generators are going to be in the form of a lease-to-own financing agreement. The first 10 were by renting them, and the second phase is those that we lease to own on the long term. It helped us because we didn't have such a financial challenge in the beginning to pay off everything. We got a great payoff agreement with the supplier. We even had a 3-year financing agreement to pay back. And the great part is that they're all brand new, 0 hour, just like the first one, the first 10, by the way. And the production took place of these containerized generators in calendar year 2024. The phase 2 power plant comprises 20 containers capable of producing standard 20 megawatt of electricity. And the first shipment left port on August the 28th. The remaining shipments are scheduled tentatively for August the 30th, being today, and the third batch is going to leave September the 3rd. Shipping time will be estimated 5 to 6 weeks, and the installation and commissioning is estimated to take 4 weeks, the same as for the first 10 sets that we need. We needed approximately 4 weeks to get them functional. We are not waiting till we have the third batch to start with the installation. We're going to start the moment we receive those containers. The first batch, we're going to install them immediately, start working on them, and gradually waiting the second batch and third batch, we're going to continue to keep up with the estimated time that we can get them commissioned on the grid for St. Martin. These are brand new. They had to be manufactured, of course, produced. The transformers are brand new also. And this is the site preparation that GEBE is busy now for the second plant for accommodation of the 20 containerized generators. And if you look at the location where they're going to be, it's going to be opposite the Texaco establishment. As you can see, the blue ones are going to be the row of 10 containerized generators. On the second row, you're going to get the second 10 containerized generators. In between the green structures will be the transformers that is going to be positioned between the two sets of 10 row containers. And the other color ones on the bottom of the plant will be the fuel tanks, and then you will have the whole complex united at the site opposite to Texaco. Yeah, I just got information that the second batch of containers that is planned to leave on the 30th of August, we just got information that indeed it's confirmed that the second batch just left to be headed towards St. Martin. This table is a very interesting table to look at it says something about all the details of each individual generator that we have on the power plant in GEBE. As you know, we have diesel generator number 7. That one is not operational at this particular moment, and it has a overheating issue. And the output of this generator in general is 4.5 megawatt. We are expecting to have this diesel generator 7 operational back in the first half of September 2024, this year. Diesel generator number 18 is functional, is working, and the output that we get out of this generator is 4.5 megawatt. Diesel generator 9 is the one that has been damaged with the fire outbreak in the past. This one used to produce 4.5 megawatt, and it's still to be determined if we can continue investing time in recovering this generator. There are some up and going about correspondence of insurance issues. The GEBE is still busy with that too. Then we go over to diesel generator 10. As you can see, used to give 4.9, and interesting is to see that this generator is retired since 2009. Till today, no action has been taken on 2009 having a generator there on the plant. Another one is diesel generator 11, retired in 2009, never been replaced, used to give 4.9 megawatt. Then we have diesel generator number 12, and it was retired in 2018. And this is a big one, used to give 11.6. It's interesting to see the amount of years that they are not functional more on the plant. We're going to continue with diesel generator number 13, sorry. This is, we call the Black Start. This diesel generator 13 only produces 0.4 megawatt. And the plant uses this generator in case of emergency to supply only the plant with electricity. It's not for use on the national grid of St. Martin. We have then a diesel generator number 14. This one is operational and is producing 7.5 megawatt. Diesel generator 15 also is functional and produces 7.5 megawatt. Diesel generator 16 has been our latest challenge. It's a journal failure. It's also a crankshaft issue, and to be determined when that we will get this one operational again to add to the grid. Diesel generator 17 is functional, operational, giving 7.5 megawatt. Diesel generator 18 is functional to giving 10.5, and diesel generator 19 is the known crankshaft challenge defect, and this one used to give 10.5, and hopefully we will be able to get this generator back on the grid at the end of the month of September. They are at this particular moment busy with this generator 19 through the company. And we have, of course, diesel generator number 20, and this is functional and is giving an output of 10.5 megawatt. The long-term solution is the stabilization with the acquisition of additional capacity of 27 megawatt. We're talking as the ones that, like the generator number 19, these are big generators. We are now in the phase, as we said already, with negotiations to see if we can get a loan that can help us to purchase these units. They are very expensive, estimated to approximately 14 million US dollars. This is quite an amount of money, and we need 3 of them to bring it back to 3 times 9 to 27 megawatt. That process is ongoing. The report that we are all waiting on is going to be published or exposed to us today, coincidentally, the Energy Nautics report that everybody is waiting on, that is going to give us some vision and guidelines how to walk the walk for the long-term solution in especially accent of renewable energy. That is what we are waiting on with the one that we have already from TNO, to combine them, two of them, for us to have a comprehensive approach to renewable future energy for Country St. Martin that we are all looking forward to have in this country. And of course, it's going to be integration of clean energy and renewable energy. The fuel clause has been many times some concerns and questions about. It still remains a difficult concept, but ultimately I got a quite good explanation about what is this fuel clause all about, how it's being calculated, and I think it's good for us to go through it. You have a formula here. The E is the A minus the B plus C plus D. That is at the end where we're going. And actually the E that we want to get to know is the net sale, being the amount of electricity available for sale after accounting for the power plant's own consumption, special agreements, and losses. So if we go now per letter, it's going to be the A first. The A is the total kilowatt per hour or per kilowatt hour. That's the total electricity generated measured in kilowattuur. That is the A. The B is the GEBE consumption at the power plant, the electricity actually used by the power plant itself to operate, which is not available for sale or distribution to the customer. The C in the formula is the fuel clause portion for 7Cs. That's the electricity allocated for a separate agreement with 7C for the production of water. And D is the fixed rate net loss, that is approximately 8.5% of the total production. That's a percentage of the total electricity produced that is not usable or is lost in the system. F, I'm going to show you F with the next slide, but in the meantime, the F is the total fuel purchases, the total cost of fuel, but we will come back to that one. And that is, the F is the total fuel purchase. You divide it by E, the net sale, and you get the outcome of the fuel clause. So if you keep this formula in mind and you go back, the F is the total fuel purchases. That is the total cost of fuel. It can be the heavy fuel oil, the light fuel oil, and the oil that you use, the lubricating oil, that to generate the electricity, that these are the costs related to that. So if you go back to the next slide, you're going to see that you use the total fuel purchases, being F, divided by the net sale E, and then you will get an outcome of a fuel clause. The fuel clause is actually, the fuel clause is the charge that reflects the cost of fuel used to produce the electricity sold. It is calculated by dividing the total cost of fuel purchases by the net sale of electricity. An example is the A again, is the total kilowattuur produced. For example, in this example, for us to apply the formula, it's 1,000,000 kilowattuur. The B was the own consumption of the power plant, is 50,000 kilowattuur. The C was the fuel clause portion, water production via 7Cs is 20,000 kilowattuur, as an example. And the D is the fixed rate net loss, is 85,000 kilowattuur. And the F is the total fuel purchases, 500,000 Antillian guilders. And then you have the E, being the first formula that I have explained. If you calculate it, you come to an amount of 845,000 kilowattuur. And the fuel clause is then the F divided by the E, and then you come by 500,000 divided by the 845, and then you come to an amount of 0.592 guilders, Antillian guilders per kilowattuur. That is actually the explanation of the fuel clause. Customer support, the NVGB will absorb, as I said in the past, the costs associated with the immediate and short-term containerized units until the main power plant's capacity is completely restored. The fuel costs will be paid completely by the NVGB for this diesel solution and not passed to the customer, as I have said in the past already. The fuel clause will continue to apply to the main power plant regular engines that we had already. Concerning complaints, the NVGB is streamlining its complaint process to facilitate customers who wish to make claims related to the power generating issues in the past. With this, I want to thank you for the latest updates that I have about our national utility company, GEBE. President of Parliament, thank you very much.
I take this moment now to thank the Honorable Prime Minister. I now look to the floor, to the members of Parliament, to ask if there's any questions that any member of Parliament would like to ask through the Honorable Prime Minister. Members? Yeah? I would now like to give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Melissa Gums. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to my colleagues, to yourself, the Griffier, to the Prime Minister and his support staff, to Mr. Washington, and to everyone listening and tuned in. For now, I really just have one question, because this is the second or third time NVGEB has said that they'll absorb the costs associated with the immediate and short-term containerized units until the main power plant's capacity is restored. And that it will not be passed on to the consumer. The first time this was said, I said publicly that I find that very highly unlikely, because there is a cost associated with these solutions, though they are necessary. And if you kind of gauge where the public sentiment is going, persons' fuel clause charges and their overall GB bills have become even more, exorbitantly high, especially taking into consideration all the load shedding that we have had. So if it could be explained again how exactly costs are not being passed on to the consumer, that would be much appreciated for the public's edification as well as our own here in Parliament. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Ms. Gums. I will now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Ms. Jacobs. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, the Griffier, my colleagues here in Parliament. Good morning to the Honourable Prime Minister and his support staff, as well as Mr. Washington of NVGB, those in the Tribune, and of course to the people of St. Martin. Mr. Chairman, I also would like thanking NVGB via the Prime Minister and through you, for the presentation made and for receiving it also to be able to follow while the presentation was being made. I do believe that the fuel clause calculation is well, it's good that it's presented, but something that was mentioned in previous meetings did not come up in it. There was talks about what percentage of the throughput fee that is paid by NVGEB for the transport of fuel. I do not see it reflected. Is it just absorbed in the total cost of fuel, as was mentioned, the total fuel purchases? In the explanation, it mentions total cost, HFO, LFO, and lube oil, HFO, LFO, to generate electricity. But I think we need to be a little bit clearer because many statements have been made in the past that government could have eliminated such a fee to be able to bring down the fuel clause. And it's also not clearly defining how market prices impact the fuel clause. So I would like a deeper explanation for the edification of the public, but also for the members of parliament who are here to represent the public in terms of all of the components within the fuel purchases. And then, of course, that will further clarify how the question my previous colleague asked about the not passing on the extra costs. So an overview of what the real current costs are or how they fluctuate. I mean, I think I do have a little more information in terms of when the market price changes. Sometimes GEBE doesn't adjust right away, and they can explain why that is the case as well, so as not to hurt the population. But the complaints I heard over the last few weeks, I also checked into my bill to see what was being experienced. And I saw that even in the time when we had heavy load shedding, that my fuel consumption seems to be higher. So that needs to be explained in terms of the brackets. I saw there was a nice graph there showing when the load shedding was at its highest. Compare that to what was the cost of fuel on the market. How long does it impact the production of fuel, energy at GEBE? And what other factors impact the fuel clause calculation? Another statement, Mr. Chairman, that has been made in the past and heavily on the campaign trail was that government can further impact the price that is paid by the consumer. If I look at the example given with the 1 million kilowatt as the total kilowatts produced, and I think we need to be very careful when we present these numbers. Yes, it's mentioned there, but reiterate that this is a fictitious example as much as possible because these numbers will be used as its reality. The point C, the fuel clause portion. So for instance, B, own consumption of the power plant. How is that price fluctuating based on, for instance, the engines being down and deciding to use light fuel instead of heavy fuel? Is that cost being applied as well over time? For point C, the fuel clause portion that is for the water production of 7Cs. 7Cs generates, or government who owns the water production, how is there any way that we can adjust that agreement so that the water company is paying for its own fuel instead of the people of St. Martin? And then how is the fixed rate net loss calculated? Is that something from the regulator, from the Ministry of TIAT, or how is that regulated? So for me, even though I'm now seeing an explanation here publicly, I don't think it clarifies the whys as to why the fuel clause is so much higher, and it does not give an indication as to what is government currently doing to try to alleviate this fuel clause being passed on to the consumer. I think that is something that the people of St. Martin would like to know, and as a representative, that's it for my questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, MP Jacobs. I now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, MP Katai. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Prime Minister, Mr. Johnson, and Mr. Washington for being with us here today. Good afternoon to all tuning in as well.
Still morning.
Good morning to all tuning in as well. I'll echo the same sentiments as my colleagues about the cost absorption, as from many individuals within our community. When there was a heavy period of load shedding, there was no power for at least half or maybe third of the month for them, but bills were doubled. So I also would like the clarity on the cost absorption. Furthermore, for another question, what is the remaining lifespan of our current operational generators at the GEBE plant? And I see in the presentation that moving further, there will be integration of clean energy and renewables. But I circle back to grid market because I've asked questions a few months ago and have received no answers as of yet. It is to my knowledge that moving this country forward in regards to an energy transition will see major roadblocks if this grid market deal is still on the table. We can further go into that once I can at least receive the answers to those 9 questions. I can resend them as well to you, Prime Minister. And this is more of a statement, just for perspective. In Curaçao, there will be a 20% reduction in electricity tariffs, which will be made possible through the full operation of new wind turbines. So that's some food for thought, and that is where we should intend to go. Thank you. Well, not the wind turbines, of course, have to wait on the energy nautics as well, but the renewable energy is the way to go. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
I thank you very much, MP Kotai. I now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Ms. De Weaver. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to you, the Prime Minister and your team, my colleagues, those that are tuned in, listening or viewing. I have to commend the Prime Minister for this presentation because it looks like he actually worked at GEBE. So I was just smiling throughout because it was a very well-prepared presentation, especially the fact that you were doing it. I know that you haven't been there long, Prime Minister, but it is commendable to see the knowledge that you're presenting in this data. And throughout the presentation, actually when we got towards the end, I leaned over to MP Gums and I was smiling because the formula is mine that I made when I was at GEBE so that we could explain the fuel clause and break it down so that if anyone had to start plugging in numbers, they could. And then MP Roseberg I'm in math class and I'm just smiling because I'm like, this is my cup of tea. So there's a couple things from the formula because, you know, it's not really easy to present numbers to people, especially numbers that they're so interested in when it comes to the fuel clause. And what I will say is MP Jacobs asked about throughput fees. So what I wanna explain the net loss, the net sales, and the throughput fees so that it's a little bit more digestible for public consumption. And the way that the fuel clause is built up is based on commodity pricing of fuels, plus the cost it takes for GEBE to produce electricity in order to sell it back to the public. So every cost included in that would be the cost to obtain it. So if that means getting the fuel from Seoul, which has a built-in price of throughput fees that is paid to government, whether it means that let's say a portion of the chemicals and whatever other materials are made in order for them to produce electricity, that's what goes into it. When it comes to the net loss, every single electricity or water company has net losses. If anyone remembers back in the day with the water company, it was over 30% net losses. So part of the cost of GEBE producing electricity also comes with a net loss for producing it. So for instance, when we had a lot of overhead lines, you would lose electricity that is going to be delivered to people. So what they do is, the way that they measure that is they look at the total amount that they're producing in the plant, and the total amount that is actually charged to people. If there is a difference in the production and what is delivered, that is when you have the net losses. And it's applicable for electricity, it's applicable for water if you have leaks in the lines, in your water lines. So this is all standard practice for utility companies. Let me be very, very clear about that. Now, when it comes to throughput fees, what I want to also say about the throughput fees is perhaps this is a place that government can actually negotiate with our fuel suppliers, because a throughput fee is charged to Seoul, for instance, by the harbor, and it's delivered directly to Seoul in GEBE. But the harbor is getting that cash. If I understand and remember it all correctly. So usually it's somewhere between $5 to $6 million, not guilders, and that is where you can negotiate and say, hey, is this an area that we can tap into to give relief to the public, but also relief to Sol, who was there for us when we had when we had a financial crisis with the energy crisis. So please consider two components where you can actually negotiate better. The other one is, as MP Jacobs beforehand alluded to, was the Airfin contract. Because part of the overall buildup of the utility company is water and electricity. So in your calculation that you have presented here today, what is in there is the cost of producing water and electricity, also related to the work that has to be done by our water company, the electricity related to that. Perhaps there, just as indicated, we can go and negotiate our contract with Airfin, who reaps the benefits of producing water for our country while not taking on a lot of the losses that GEBE has. So I specifically put that down, and when I heard my colleague MP talking, I said, she gets it, actually, she really does. MP Jacobs, not saying she. But and this is what I want to say. So there is relief out there, but we also have to be fair with the contracts that people have had before. We have to negotiate it, be tough, and put our foot down and say, are we all in it for our community? Are we in it to just allow another entity who has been a great partner and stakeholder the entire time, but right now, try not to, take advantage right now when we need everyone on board, all hands on deck, so that we could actually see how we can pass on the relief. So the last part I want to say about a fuel clause, and I mentioned it earlier on, do not forget that fuel is a commodity. It's a globally traded price that is influenced by the international price of oil. So sometimes it looks like, oh, but Sol has a monopoly and they can set whatever prices they want. Technically, there's a limit and a ceiling to it, and if they are going to be a fair stakeholder and a fair partner in St. Martin, I know that they have been there for us in the past, and we have been there back for them. And anyone else who wants to come in to the market, by all means, have fun. That's a dialogue to have with the Council of Ministers, and then here eventually. But just be very fair when reviewing the awesome formula that I created as the former business analysis advisor. And again, thank you very much for this thorough presentation. I was coming in here today with doubts that, the monies that went to the short term wasn't available. And I have to say, honestly, that I feel a little bit more secure. I'll feel better when I see it's delivered, but thank you very much.
I thank you, MP De Weaver. I now give the floor to Member of Parliament, Honorable Omar Utley. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as I sit here, opposition member, I must say that when I hear my colleague MP De Weaver speaks, it gives me hope. It gives me hope as we don't go on here, say or she say, whatever say, that if indeed it is true, we have a minister, potential minister of Rummy that knows what she is doing. When I hear MP De Weaver speaks, I felt like she took my notes, because I understand fuel clause. While I do not agree, I understand the formula, and to see that the formula was actually written by the MP, while I do not agree with the way that GEBE is carrying out this mechanism. GEBE is the monopoly. GEBE makes money off of the people of St. Martin. But when I see here, the people of St. Martin is basically being used to pay every bill from GEBE. We speak of Sol. Sol had a 30-year exclusivity contract, which eventually is coming to an end. I would like to hear, Honorable Prime Minister, through you, Mr. Chair, what is the plan when it pertains to Sol? Are we now looking for different options, viable options? Are we going to just renew due to the fact that we owe Sol? And if it's not coming to an end this year, next year, eventually it'll come to an end. And if I'm wrong, correct me if they do not have exclusivity through you, Mr. Chair. Also, echo the sentiments of my colleague MP Gums. There is said that the cost will not be passed on to the public. Find it very strange as budgets are usually neutral. So what goes out needs to come in. What is the plan then? Are we going to crack down on collections through you, Mr. Chair, to ensure that money is coming in? I also see that we have generators that we're going to fix. So we hear more containerized generators and we hear fixing of generators, but a lot of these generators that we want to fix has reached their maximum time. So it goes back to the question of my honorable colleague, Mr. Katai. What is the lifespan of those generators, specifically the ones that we are fixing? What is the plan for GEBE pertaining to the main generators indeed? Does GEBE has money to purchase new generators besides the containerized generators? Because for us to purchase these containerized generators and then still go through the problems a year or two from now with the main generators leaves us back in a quagmire. I would like to hear more specifically through you, Mr. Chair, through the Honorable Prime Minister. You gave us a sneak peek of your vision. If it's not now, but before the end of this meeting, I would like a more elaborate plan, a 4-year plan for GEBE, a 4-year plan and real vision for GEBE, a realistic one considering the financial constraints. I also would like to know, I know when we were in the Council of Ministers, GEBE had some, and maybe this can be answered off or privately, I'll take this in writing to you, Mr. Chair, had some financial constraints and definitely not where they needed to be. But seeing that we can purchase these containerized generators without passing the cost to the public, I would like to know from an analysis over the past year to see if GEBE's financials has increased. Also, with all of the additional expense, I would like to know GEBE's ability to pay workers, pay bonuses that are customary. Christmas is, believe it or not, right around the corner, and also the COLAs for the workers. How is this being worked out with GEBE? Do they foresee any issues with bonuses, COLAs, and payment of management and workers? Let me see if I have any other questions. So, okay, I think that'll be it for now, Mr. Chair, through you. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Member of Parliament Utley. I now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, MP Jacobs. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. After hearing one of my colleagues, I realized that I did not ask one of the questions that had come up when I saw the presentation as it relates to our bills. On our bills, there's the fixed amount of the 25 cents. And then the added fuel cost, which, if I looked over this year, fluctuated between 38 to 42 cents per kilowatt hour. How does, in the formula presented, or why is the 25 cents separated from the fuel clause? I need a better explanation as to what then is this 25 cent calculated from. And then I took note also, I didn't go into it in the first time I spoke, the Honorable Prime Minister, while I'm hearing others giving kudos to the presentation and to the ownership of it, is it so that this is a NVGB presentation or is it a government presentation? And as shareholder, representative of the COM and shareholder of NVGEBE, I heard we, is it we government or is it we NVGEBE that have that is making the statements within the document or the presentation made here in Parliament. I just want to be clear in terms of how involved is government at this time in the decision-making at GEBE, or if the Honorable Prime Minister is now just conveying information as has been relayed by NVGEBE. Also, in hearing what one of the other members mentioned, I would like the Prime Minister, through you, Mr. Chairman, and with, of course, input from NVGEBE, because this now is two-pronged, please explain the difference between government's roadmap towards the transition for renewable energy, which was prepared by Grid Market, vis-a-vis the recently finalized strategic business plan that was done by Energy Nautics with the assistance of the NRPB and the funding therein for NVGEBE. So I would like for the government of St. Martin with NVGEBE to prepare a explanation as to what is the difference between the roadmap, government's roadmap towards the transition for renewable energy, which was prepared by Grid Market, vis-a-vis the recently concluded strategic business plan, which was commissioned via Energy Nautics with the funding through the trust fund that had been set aside for NVGEBE, which I understand the delay in finalizing it, but we would like to know what is the difference between those two documents and how they, if they at all, relate to each other. I'm hoping with that, Mr. Chairman, that my question is clear, but I think in terms of the forward movement of NVGEBE and seeing just the bland statement that there will be renewables at some point in the future, trying to understand why the heavy investment still in more and more heavy fuel reliant engines, generators, that would help clarify for me the vision for government, for the vision for energy production of St. Martin in general. Also because statements were made that I'm quite certain were not part of the presentation as to, you know, it's noteworthy to mention what wasn't done in this stage and what wasn't done in that stage. But I think you cannot just make those statements without understanding in that stage when such engines were no longer used. At that time, were other engines purchased? Was already the plan to move towards some level of renewable in place so that there's an overall picture, Mr. Chairman, and not that there is a discussion happening and that we are still politicizing the environment while we are in the solution finding phase, and happy to see that solutions are coming, but ensuring that there is a comprehension, a full comprehension of all mitigating factors of when things took place, what was playing at the time, etc. So I will rest my case at this point and look forward to further clarity on the questions that have been asked here in Parliament from GEBE through the Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, MP Jacobs. I now give the floor to the Honorable Member of Parliament, MP Arian. You now have the floor.
Ludi, it says Ludi. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to the Honorable Prime Minister, his support staff, Mr. Washington, my members of Parliament, to the viewing public. Thank you for the presentation, Prime Minister. I have a couple of questions. I think that MP Jacobs touched on the throughput fees, and this has been a discussion for a while now, but what I would like from the government side is to really explain why the throughput fees exist, how they came into play, and really break it down for the general public. Because we have to understand sometimes we look at investments and items that we see in the public and don't understand that everything that we do has a cost. There's nothing in this world that's free. And I think this is also important for future investments that we might be looking at. Second to that, you just came out of an election, and there was a lot of discussions on GEBE in particular, and I believe that now it's also time to hold the parties and even individuals accountable for their expectations that were created during this time. One faction is the DP faction, who mentioned, for example, about removing the concession fee from GEBE to bring relief. What I would like to know from the government, is this an option? Is this an option that the government is looking into? Removing the concession fee, so the amount that GEBE pays the government every year, removing that in any way that would then allow Mr. Washington and his team to bring some sort of relief for the people. If that's the case, would that also be reflected in the Budget Amendment 2024 or the Budget 2025 and going forward? Because I think, yes, we have all these discussions, but the general population right now just want to hear about some type of relief, and not just, let's say, in the price of the cost of their bills, but the fact that they had to go through this load shedding period, that some type of relief should be given for experiencing the load shedding period, not just the bills. So are we going to say, listen, of course, GEBE is a business, we have employees to pay, and they also have to look at future investments. We can't bankrupt GEBE, obviously. But are we going to look and say, hey, this is our revenue, this is the amount we have for a certain period of time, for those at least then that have been paying their bills, for a 6-month period, you will have a 20% reduction, a 30% reduction on your bill for this period of time, as a sorry, a thank you for your patience during this time. Obviously, in line with making sure that GEBE can afford it. But I think that we have to have some type of discussion about relief. You know, persons that have been affected by equipment going bad, for example, and they don't have the receipts from 3 years ago. They didn't save the receipt with the expectation that we'd have the load shedding and it would damage their equipment. So it's hard for them to even be able to get a refund through the GEBE program that they do have. So again, I would really like to know if any sort of relief, and it doesn't have to be 2024, but if it's 2025 even, if there's any discussion about a future relief for persons, specifically for the period of the load shedding that they had to endure. Yes, that'll be all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament Arian. I now give the floor to MP DeWeaver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm so glad that I listened to the advice of people who tell me that going into politics, you have to have really broad shoulders and thick skin, because especially for certain things said today and out there, it's a good reminder of how you have to be. I have a very simple question from someone within the community that just wanted a little bit of clarification for the Prime Minister. And if I may, I will try to paraphrase just to make sure that I have the right understanding so that it could be clarified or confirmed when the Prime Minister comes back to answer it. The question is whether or not the containers that we have already that went into effect and already installed, if they were indeed new, why are we not purchasing them instead of renting them? But if I remember the explanation, I thought that this solution, this immediate solution we have now with the generators, the container generators that the Prime Minister showed us on the screen, these were leased because it was the quickest option for us to get this extra production to alleviate the load shedding. And then the second option was to order brand new containers, which are supposed to be which was what the Prime Minister said was shipped out today. And those are the ones that we are owning, we are purchasing to own. So if the Prime Minister, please, through you, Mr. Chairman, can confirm that the current containers on land and in use were rented, used generators, do we have the option of purchasing those? And clarifying that the new ones that were shipped out today are new, brand new, and it's the ownership option. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament DeWeaver. I now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament Duran. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the Honourable Prime Minister, representatives of GEBE, supporters of the Secretariat, and the people of St. Martin that are tuned in. Mr. Chairman, most of my points were brought forward by my colleagues, but I have a few more questions that I would like to put on the table for clarification purposes. I know that during the campaign, a lot was said. My slogan is, during the campaign, we highlight our differences, and after that, we highlight our similarities. This GEBE crisis has plagued our country, especially over the last couple of months, and I believe that it's time now for all hands on deck. During the campaign, I also highlight that there could be a need for establishing of a sort of a national supervisory committee for NVGEBE. I gave an elucidation of having one representative from each elected political party, so one representative, whether in opposition and or coalition, to just have that sort of oversight. Also, we would have somebody from the SER, the Social Economic Council, and also somebody from the General Audit Chamber, and GEBE, of course. I would like to let the Prime Minister know that a letter is on its way through you, Mr. Chairman, with the suggestions, of course, with more intricate details, and I hope that this can be taken into consideration as we go through the solution phase, as my colleague MP Jacobs mentioned. Second to that, I know that there was a lot of discussions about a blockage of generators being purchased from 2020 and 2021. Now that the whole fanfare of the election is over, I would really like to know through you, Mr. Chairman, why weren't these generators purchased? What was the real holdup? And if there's still plans on the table to purchase these, because I'm hearing a lot about the leased containerized generators. I'm hearing about the ones that we're purchasing now, but the ultimate solution, which will be the more permanent solution, it's still a little vague for me. Are they on their way? Are they in production at this point? I would like that clarification on those 2 points for now, Mr. Chairman. And for now, I will await the responses before I further delve into the other points. Thank you for the opportunity. And thanks again to the Prime Minister for the presentation.
I thank you very much to the Honourable Member Duran. I now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, MP Arian. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to follow up in regards to solar, and of course, the request has been for policy going forward from GEBE and also government. But in the meantime, consumers are already in the field. Consumers are already buying, and so we are a bit behind the wheel. And when I look at, for example, doing some research and some other islands, but one that's close to us, that's Aruba, in their version of RUMI, they have a department that focuses on solar policy. So an individual cannot just implement solar on their homes. You have to follow the policy of the government. And I've heard GEBE mention this before also because of the risk on the GEBE side. You put up a solar panel with the wrong inverter. GEBE goes to do some work on the road or a unit, a house or whatever, and they assume that the grid is off, and all of a sudden now they are electrocuted, for example, which would be at an extreme case. So it's a thing probably for government to even generate revenue, to look at its potential policy, have a couple individuals trained, and that now consumers now could potentially give back, because now we have the policy, we have the systems, and now GEBE could now start to lessen the load shedding because of a certain amount of individuals or companies putting back solar into the grid. And seemingly a lot more persons are also going with the battery option. So I would like to know if that's something between the Prime Minister and the Minister of RUMI. Have they looked into that already?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member Arian. I look at my speakers list, and I think that's it when it comes to the questions from the Honourable Members of Parliament. I am seeing MP La Cruz is requesting the floor. Am I correct? I'll now give the floor over to the Honourable Member of Parliament, La Cruz. You now have the floor.
A blessed afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. A blessed afternoon to my fellow colleagues here in Parliament, Honourable Prime Minister and your support staff, members of the Secretariat, and Mr. Washington from GEBE. Prime Minister, thank you for the presentation. But while I'm sitting here, I'm for some reason, I'm getting very worried because knowing business, I don't understand how, according to my calculations, what something that would cost about 18 million in fuel clause will not be charged. So that is extremely important for me to understand, where that, how is that going to be covered? I would have rather hear, that the cost exists and GEBE will bring it in some sort of relief for the people instead of saying that it's not going to be charged at all. I want to make sure and thank the employees of GEBE because I know it can't be easy on them right now. Everyone cursing and upset at GEBE while they are doing their utmost best to take us out of these dark ages. So thank you to all the employees of GEBE and Mr. Washington, yourself also. Prime Minister, on Tuesday, the 17th of June, in the Daily Herald, and I quote page 10, there were 3 options. And I want to go back a little because there were a couple questions that, and like my colleague mentioned, because we were not able to speak in the first meeting, that is the reason we requested this meeting again. Okay, so I saw that you gave 3 options. One was a 20 megawatt electricity for 3.9 million. The second was a 32 megawatt for 5.4 per month, and the largest at 8.2 million per month, which was a 50 megawatt generator. These all would have been functional in 6 weeks and all including fuel. The quickest solution was renting a power badge. That's my opinion. So the question is, why was the more expensive short-term solution sought while there was a quicker solution for less money? Then when I look at the comparison of the 20 megawatt electricity usage, the badge versus the containerized generators, a 20 megawatt badge would have cost us 3.9 million per month, including fuel versus containerized generators, with a megawatt costing of 300,000 per month. Multiply that by 20, and we still have a 6 million, which would take 3 months. So looking at a comparison, this would have eventually cost us in total 2.1 million more monthly. And that's still excluding diesel, which would be additional costs. Now I'm hearing different. So I'd really like to know where that is going. The other 2 questions were somewhat answered. And like my fellow colleague, MP Otley mentioned, concerning Sol and the ending of a contract that I heard was mentioned before, other places with the exclusivity. And if you remember my statement, it is clear everything that is exclusive has a recipe for 2 things. One is high prices and bad service. So that I would really like to know what the stance of the government current and maybe also the future government on that option for opening it up that other companies could also bid on being providers here in our country. And I would really like to know if GEBE has any plans of finding a way of eradicating the fuel clause in its totality. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you very much to the Honourable Member of Parliament, La Cruz. I see that we are still going down the line. I will now give the floor to Member of Parliament, the Honourable Member Rusberg. You now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Blessed day to my colleagues. Blessed afternoon to the Prime Minister and the support staff. Thank you for the presentation. Seeing all that was brought, and oh yeah, also a blessed day to St. Martin, of course. Seeing all that was brought forward by my colleagues, and also in regards to the compensation, I also would like to know through you, Mr. Chair. I know the Prime Minister and the GEBE are very busy, but there was a proposal submitted in regards to compensation and relief to the public of St. Martin, seeing the electricity loss. So to see if that was a chance to look at that already and also maybe take the pointers which were brought forward by my colleagues into consideration so that that can be clarified for the public of St. Martin. That was my only question for now.
I thank you very much to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Shamila Roseberg. I now look at the floor, and I would continue with the list and give it to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Omar E.C. Utley. You now have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a few more questions. It was mentioned in a press briefing to you, through you, Mr. Chair, of the management board and directors being instated. I would like to know what is the timeline for this, who was selected, if that is possible to share, and then what will be the case with the special representative that we have? Because are we planning to pay both persons, or once the management board is installed, what is the case? Also, I would like to, I asked through you again, Mr. Chair, ask the plans of the government. I would also like to know GEBE's plans within the next coming years, what they have planned for their company to better the, gain the trust of the people. That's number one and foremost. Put themselves in a better financial situation. Is renewable energy on their radar, and how long will it take to be a reality? And also, my last question through you, Mr. Chair, to the Honorable Prime Minister. What are basically the pros and cons of, one, this is just a question, privatizing GEBE or allowing competition on St. Martin? I just would like to know some of the pros and cons. We have to look at every aspect, I think, as leaders of a country. We need to look at every aspect. Thank you.
I thank you very much, Member of Parliament Utley. I look at my speakers list, and I would continue with the Honourable Member of Parliament, Mr. Brugge. You now have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Blessed afternoon to one and all tuning in. Blessed afternoon to the Prime Minister, Mr. Stuart Johnson and Mr. Washington from GB. Basically, I only have one question. Since the hack, a lot of the consumers have been complaining that the bills that they have been receiving is still an issue. I would like to know through you, Mr. Chairman, if the Prime Minister can find out from GB what is being done about it. When are the bills going to be finally regulated so that individuals can receive their rightful bills, because that's still a complaint. And I know that one of the reasons that a lot of persons in the community is not paying their bills is because they can't afford it, and they also don't believe that the amount that they are being charged is the fair or the correct amount. So a decision has to be made as, well, I know they're busy working on it, but the public would like to know exactly when is it regulated, or is it regulated already? That's the end of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Member of Parliament Reginald Brugge. I will continue on the speakers list, and I will also give the floor again to the Honourable Member of Parliament La Cruz. You now have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually skipped two questions that I had. One question and one MP is nervous.
It's okay. You have the floor, sir. Go ahead.
So I understood that it is not possible for an individual to, for example, go totally off of the grid of GEBE by placing his home totally on solar. I'd like to know if that is true or not, and why is that the case if it is so. And I'd like to make a statement. Mr. Chairman, I think GEBE has not been financially audited in a couple years. So definitely, I will be putting that motion together in the near future to audit GEBE or request a financial audit from GEBE from 2016 till this year, 2024. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you very much to the Honourable Member of Parliament, La Cruz. It seems as if we'll be having a long day because the members of Parliament now is excited in their questions to ask. And I was just reminded a while ago by my honourable colleague that I'm still a member of Parliament until the 19th of September.
No.
I thank you for the reminder.
21st.
I thank you for the reminder, MP La Cruz. I will now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, MP Clyde Marlin. You now have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to the Honourable Prime Minister, support staff, and Mr. Washington, and to the viewing and listening audience. I'll keep it short. I have one question, basically. It is, when did the fuel clause started? Why did it start it, and how long do we intend to continue with the fuel clause? I thank you.
I thank you very much to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Clyde Marlin. I now give the floor to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Egbert Duran. You now have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In my notes, I forget to ask one question, so I will definitely do so because there was a lot of talk about it, especially over the last couple of weeks. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the Honorable Prime Minister and GEBE, I know that everyone talks about relief. I would like to know, because even during the campaign trail, it was said that we're going to erase all bills and start from zero, which I know is not realistic financially for the institution. I would like to know if there are any thought right now to alleviate the burden from the general population, and how does the government, in collaboration with GEBE, of course, and their supervisory board of directors and management, plan to do so. So what are some real viable options in terms of relief? Because we had the hack, as my colleague mentioned. We had the incorrect bills. We have the disturbance of no consistent energy supply. So what is GEBE doing and government doing to alleviate the burden on the people in a realistic and viable, also I want to emphasize, responsible manner to bring real relief? Thank you very much.
I thank you very much to the Honourable Member of Parliament, Egbert Duran. I now look at the speakers list. I see no more names for any more questions to the Honourable Prime Minister. So what I will do at this moment, I will probably adjourn for 5 minutes so I can have a little deliberation with the Honourable Prime Minister to see where he would like to go in terms of answering the questions, or probably take some time. I'm also looking at the clock, and I realize that it's also lunch. So I'll adjourn right now for 5 minutes, and we'll be back. Meeting adjourned. Good afternoon to the honorable members of Parliament. Good afternoon to the general public. Good afternoon to the Honorable Prime Minister, his support staff, everyone in the Tribune, everyone who's watching and listening to us. And yes, we adjourned the meeting shortly, so I could have had a little consultation with the Honorable Prime Minister. And in that discussion, it was brought to my attention that given the technical nature of the questions that was asked and posed, the Honorable Prime Minister is saying to get back to the honorable members of Parliament within 2 weeks so he can make sure that all the answers are given. And on behalf of GEBE, it was also noted that in preparations for all that is happening right now, their technicians are very, very busy in consulting and consultation with the preparation work for all the containers and everything that is happening, and they themselves need some time to put answers to the questions that was asked from the honorable members of Parliament. And seeing that that is the case, 2 weeks still falls within myself being here. So, so I see it okay to grant the Honorable Prime Minister the 2 weeks. I see that I have a request from the Honorable Member of Parliament, Omar E.C. Utley, which I have no problem giving him the floor at this moment, but I would also like him, and as much as I know it's a CC, to please make it short. Thank you very much.
No.
MP, you have the floor.
I'll be short, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, I have no problems with the 2 weeks requested. However, I have one request. Throughout this whole saga, we have yet to hear from or see the plant manager, the head of the plant. I would like to request his presence. I think it's very important. I don't know if that's possible, but I would like. Why isn't it possible? Well, we'll leave it in the air, but it'll be good to have the plant manager here.
I thank you very much, Honorable Member Utley. Given your request, I would have to deny that request for the simple fact that the shareholder representative in the person of the Honorable Prime Minister and his support staff are the ones that is here to carry out the answers, and that was requested. So not that to say it can't happen, but no, given the nature of the meeting that we are having now, the person is represented in the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luke Mercelina. So as I made mention earlier, I will now give the floor to the Honorable Prime Minister. I don't know if you have any closing remarks, but I will also give you the floor at this present moment before we close this meeting. Prime Minister, you now have the floor.
Thank you, President of Parliament. In the first place, thank you for the opportunity to be here to explain the whole development of the national crisis that concerns all of us. I would like really to thank the members of Parliament for their constructive approach for us to get together to a great solution to bring prosperity and increase the livelihood of our people. And especially thank you very much for granting me the 2 weeks for me to give good answers, well thought of, that is going to be very informative for a constructive solution, contribution of all of us for the future of the people of St. Martin. And as last, I would once more, and one of the members of Parliament said it, I would really want to thank the personnel of GEBE for everything that they have been doing to get us going with this country under very challenging times. And of course, the people of St. Martin, thank you for your patience, your indulgence for us to get together through this crisis, and we're looking forward to better days. Thank you very much, President.
I thank you very much to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Luke Mercelina. Ladies and gentlemen, honorable members of Parliament, the media support staff, I would like to thank everyone, especially the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, Dr. Luke Mercelina and his support staff, for being here today in providing the necessary information. So once again, I say thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this meeting. I want to thank everyone for their participation, and I hereby hereby adjourn this meeting. I thank you very much. Do have a nice day. Enjoy the weekend. Take care. God bless you guys. Bye.